Hello, welcome to the live stream. Well, now that we have one more hour of sunlight at the end of the day because they did not get rid of daylight saving time, which I am not happy about. The kittens are adorable little loading screen now because they get fed right before the live stream. So it's pretty effective at having some content. They're very spotlit though because there's so much sun. It's like weirdly sunny in Portland today. Um, but hello, welcome. It's lovely to see you all here. I'm glad that we're here. I just realized I do not think chat actually started yet, so I can't actually see any of the chat. Give me a second here. Do do do. Do do do. Wait, Aaron, what do I do in OBS?
Deck link.
Output?
Yeah. Does it say start?
No, it says stop. I'll stop and start it again. Do do do. This is blank
That's the
though.
wrong one. Should be admin.
Da, da, da.
Bookmarked it.
Anyway, what are we talking about today? While I try to problem solve. If this was radio, it would have just been dead air. That would have been great. Okay. While I attempt to problem solve, the chat. While I attempt to problem solve the chat, what we were talking about today, I figured since Ramadan just started, we could talk a little bit about charity and how that interplays with budgeting. Because I think right now, with so many things going on in the world that a lot of us want to give to, and it might not just be charity in terms of the traditional sense of giving to, the poor or giving to registered charitable organizations. It can also be giving within the priority of friends and family and people that you know. Could be GoFundMe's, but it also could just be supporting friends going through a hard time or supporting adult children as they start setting up life or they go through a tough time. And I giving is a really important thing to a lot of people. It's part of their core values. I always talk a lot about how values are the key to budgeting. But there can be seasons to giving and how you prioritize giving in your budget, just the same as there's seasons for other things in your life. So you can have times where giving can be higher in your financial priority list. And then there can be times where you need to make sure to take care of yourself and your own goals before you start giving to others. And it doesn't make you selfish to have moments where you need to prioritize your own financial stability above other other people. And it also does not make you it doesn't make you ungrateful for when you receive things just because you are then using them on yourself. That was not very well said, but coincidentally a similar topic on Bad with Money today, but for kids. Oh, interesting. I have not listened to Bad with Money in a while. Is that a legal sized paper cat now? Wait, you mean are the cats actually legal sized paper? This is a very good comparison for this channel, is how large the cats are. Kitten, either of you up for, I think we'll get a kitten. So once we get a kitten over the overhead camera, I will put a legal size paper next to her and we can determine what stationary size she is. I would venture to say legal paper sized. Maybe letter. Maybe A5? Are you A5? Meteorex says backstage in rehearsal, so I will stop in as I can. Well, it's lovely to see you here. That seems important. Look how big that kitty is. I still would not say the kitties are that big, but they are definitely not the tiny kitties they were in the beginning. Everybody wants to just comment on how big the cats are. So, Yeah, charity. Oh, I also should show you the donut, which I still had its little house on it to prevent cat problems. So, let's show you the donut. I'm worried that it's probably amazing, but I'm probably not gonna love it as much as some other people would. This is a strawberry chocolate old fashioned. So it has a fresh cut strawberry on the top. It has real strawberry powder on it, has a chocolate glaze, and this is why I think I could handle it. I love old fashions, and it's an old fashioned strawberry donut with real strawberry powder in it. But the chocolate's going to be a bit of a struggle for me. But I'm doing it. I'm doing it for y'all. Very pretty though, and if you can really see, it's just like a hunk of strawberry on there. So that is the donut for today. I've already started to fill in the donut log. I kind of found that it wasn't time effective to do these on the stream unless it was a planner stream. So I've been kind of doing them ahead of time, and then we'll just fill in the ratings on the stream. But we're making quick work of this donut journal. Look at this. So, let's actually kind of reverse this from usual. I have a lot of things I can talk about with this topic, but I'm kind of curious if anybody has questions or challenges that they've been dealing with around prioritizing charity, either maybe feeling like they're slowing down on other financial goals because of the charity, or feeling like they can't give enough relative to the need, which I feel like is very relevant right now. Or maybe you're struggling with figuring out like you have the capacity to do charitable giving and you want to figure out a way to make it the most effective, but you are struggling with the efficacy when dealing with like a lot of the urgent needs right now are in war zones, and it can be really challenging to figure out how best to direct your money in war zones where you don't get a lot of great information about the organizations operating there. So let me know, what are your thoughts? What are some things that you've been struggling with? I got a question. I dug it up for this live stream. I got a question back when I worked as one of the Slate financial advice columnists that was like, hey, so I have a high income, like $700,000 a year. That's what this person said. It's not what I'm saying. I have a high income that is like $700,000 a year, and it's mostly W-2, therefore super highly taxed, right? So if you're really rich and you make most of your income off of capital gains, off of stocks, off of real estate, that stuff tends to be very tax advantaged, which is one of the reasons that billionaires pay so much less taxes than average working class people do. But if you are someone with a very high income that is just still working for a living for an employer and you're W-2, in the US, you will have a pretty high tax rate. There can be discussions about whether or not that tax rate is high enough. You also tend to be phased out of a lot of things. So you might be phased out of the kinds of credits that you had gotten used to when you were at a lower income, if that was ever true. So someone asked, okay, I make $700,000 a year and I only give like $10,000 a year to charity. And I realize that's quite low at my income level, but also I pay a lot in taxes and the taxes support things. What should I be doing? What's the moral amount to give? And one of the things that I think is a useful way to look at it, one of the reasons that it being the start of Ramadan this week inspired me to do this, is because a big part of Ramadan is also giving to charity, giving zakat, and that is all calculated in Islam. Like there's literally zakat calculators that will have you put in all of your assets and it will tell you how much of your wealth you need to give to the poor. And it comes out to hello kitten, I need a legal sized sheet of paper. Is this a legal size sheet of paper? No, this is bigger. This is almost legal size sheet of paper. Is the cat the same size? I don't know if this is legal sized, actually, now that I look at it, because it's a wallpaper sample. It was the nearest piece of paper that I had. But the cats are definitely bigger than an 8.5 by 11. Okay, this is the larger cat, and this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So I would say that she's legal sized now. Hi, what are we doing? Ugh. Calm down. Okay, I got distracted there. So, zakat is 2.5% of your wealth given to the poor every year annually. So it isn't your income, it's based on your wealth. So the calculators for it will have you put in everything, your total cash, your bank account balances, what the value of your stock holdings would be, your merchandise and profits, gold and silver that you own, the property that you have, and then, deduct your debts and everything, your total debts, not just like your service on your debts. And then that is your eligible kind of total whatsoever. There are limits to how much of your wealth you are also expected to give, because there is a minimum amount. It's called, I think it's nisab. I think that's how you pronounce it. But there's a minimum amount in Islam where if you are below that threshold, which is essentially like determined at kind of subsistence level, you are not obligated to give to the poor. And the idea is this exactly the same that I was kind of saying earlier, which is that like you can't pour from an empty cup. And there will be times in your life where you might not have the capacity to be giving because you are in a situation where you just don't have a lot of extra to give. And so the obligation in Islam is that you should not give if you are below the nisab amount. And that calculation it's written it is written in the Quran, and it's complicated, and there's also calculators for that because it changes. So there is also a lot of guidelines in a lot of religions, and I think these are helpful for thinking about with morality, even if you aren't religious. Because what are religions if not a group of humans getting together and making decisions about what is moral? Sometimes, theoretically, a prophet has, who may or may not be human, has determined this ahead of time. But the act of religion is tradition and practices, and those traditions and practices are interpretations of whatever was determined. Like, it is humans actively making determinations about how something should be practiced. And quite often we make decisions where we decide that certain things shouldn't be interpreted anymore. So I think that when looking at ethics, I don't think that religions are the only way to look at ethics, but I think it is a very helpful framing device because you can kind of look for the similarities across world religions, even if you're not religious, around things that you are looking for guidance on, right? And when it comes to charity, there is a lot of similarities, but if you're looking for percentages, those range quite a lot. In Judaism, there is a range essentially of how much you're supposed to give. It's between $2 per year for someone living on subsistence level, 10% for an average income, and then up to 20% for extra mitzvahs, which is like doing good. But there's a limit. At 25%, that is the max that you're supposed to be able to give. You can't, for example, give away 99% of your wealth, because then that could cause you to overgive. And they don't want you to overgive and then become reliant on the charity of others when that wasn't a possibility before. I do wonder if maybe some of these standards were developed before some people were billionaires and they could give 99% of their wealth away and still be living more generously than most humans on the planet. Most Protestants tithing, which is giving to the church, is usually 10% of your income. Catholicism, 10% of your income. In Hinduism, Skanda Puran is 10% of your income to public works or the poor. And then there's another thing called Dan, I think that's how you pronounce it. And that's used to, after you have taken care of your family and yourself, you can give up to 40% of your wealth away. But that is meant to be like after you are set up. So for a lot of people, that would be like later in life philanthropy. The LDS, which is Latter-day Saints, I think now they want to be known as the Saints, Mormonism. They've gone by a lot of names. They've been doing a lot of rebranding lately. But the LDS, they do 10%, but it has to be tithed to the church, which is similar to how Catholicism was doing it a long time ago. A lot of kind of modern Catholics don't necessarily give their tithe directly to the church. In Mormonism, you can't access the parts of the religion, like being able to get married in the temple, being able to do certain kinds of rituals, unless you are up to date on your 10% tithe. And that money goes to the church, which is like the institution itself, which is run by volunteers. But some of that gets passed on to the poor, theoretically, in that there's like a mutual aid society within the Mormon church that is like funded by, it's called the Relief Society, and that is funded by tithes partially. However, like accessing that is usually only available to people within the LDS community generally. There's no specific percentages in Buddhism, but service is a really common part of Buddhism. It is in Hinduism as well, but that isn't always financial. Service is also tied to volunteerism. Okay, now that we've done this kind of rough, and Sikhism is 10% of your income, but that can also be volunteering. And now that we've kind of done this review of kind of the different things, you'll notice that like the toppity tippity top is 40%, but that's after you've already taken care of your family. And kind of the low end is like nothing if you're subsistence living, or $2 a year if you're subsistence living, which could be a month's pay. When I worked in secular nonprofits as a development person, which means fundraising, the guideline that we like to use for middle class and upper middle class people was 1 day's pay per month. And that equals out to like less than 5% of your annual income if you work like a standard full-time job in the US. And the reason we did that is that's kind of like an actionable number, but it is also something that allows you to have it doesn't feel over the top, but it does feel like something where you actually are giving something up. That's also common in LDS church as well, where they will fast. A family will fast for 1 meal a month and then donate the cost of that meal as an additional offering above their tithe. Has this been too much religion already? LDS is like a sports team with the rebranding. Yeah, I think they want to be known as the Saints now. What's the shuffling noise? Is that a cat? Yes, the cats are having a chase right now. Sorry, I didn't know that the mic could pick it up, but oh yeah, is my mic in a bad position again? Because it is covered in cat hair. This is going to sound terrible when I pull this off, but I want to show. Look how covered in cat hair this is. It is... Yes, that shuffling noise was a cat. If you couldn't see that. Just running down the stairs. Anyway, this mic gets pulled down every single time. Yes, my cup was only full during the pandemic when the government was giving out money. I kept running into that. Like, there was a period there in early pandemic for people I knew that were still employed and, like, weren't furloughed, weren't laid off. And suddenly weren't spending like almost any discretionary income because nobody was like going out, and people were getting groceries delivered and cooking at home more and all sorts of things. People weren't commuting for people that have long commutes that were costing a lot. And there was a period there where people were like, I have excess cash and I don't know what to do with it. And a lot of people were saving, which is why the savings rate hit so much higher in the US and Canada than it had in quite a while. Um, but people keep being like, what do I do with all this extra money? And this was before interest rates were going up. So it's not like you could like stuff it in a savings account and be making a chunk of change off of it. And I just kept being like, a lot of people, it's really hard right now. And you could just give away money. I kept telling people that. I think I did quite a few interviews like that. I love the comedian Maria Bamford and her technique of donating 11% of her income so she's one better than the church. I love that. Maria Bamford, if you don't know, if you aren't familiar with her, she's super open about her finances and publishes all sorts of information about her finances. Is very fascinating. I also am public about my finances, but I am not at the career level that Maria Bamford is. So it's actually really interesting to see what this looks like for like a gigging high level TV acting comedian. I'm coming in loud and clear tonight. Well, I hope it wasn't too bad when I grabbed that. I don't know why the cats are so activated. I think it's the daylight savings time. I think that they get like an extra hour of daylight to be wild during my live stream. Fuzzbubble says interesting calculations for wealth. Okay. So I want to talk about considerations when it comes to giving. And I'm not using this to only refer to giving to charities. I'm also using this to refer to anything that you are giving someone else without the expectation of something in return. Which is also how I always say that you should treat loaned money. I don't think you should ever loan money to someone outside of a business scenario, but in a personal scenario, family, friends, you should never lend money that you can't afford to make a gift, because then you're going to end up in the situation of you are going to harm relationships but when the person can't pay you back, and it's going to breed resentment if they can't pay you back. And if you're relying on them paying you back to pay your rent, you could end up with just two more broke people. So I always say, do not lend anything if you can't afford to not get it back. And so giving includes this. Even if you are structuring it as a loan for dignity reasons, for getting your adult child to take responsibility reasons, you should always think of it as something that you can afford to lend without getting it back. Doesn't mean you need to let the person know that if for whatever reason. So when it comes to considerations about giving, I think it's great to be generous and prioritize charity, but you have to think about it in the perspective of it can't be the only value and the only goal you're working towards. Because your own success, sustainability, health is important as well. And there is a such thing as a person that gives so much that they, drain their own selves. Sometimes it can be in their time and their energy, which is really what we've seen around a lot of burnout in the caring professions. But it can also be that you are so stressed about what is happening in the world or what is happening in a friend's life that you are giving of your energy and you're not replenishing your own energy. And this can also kind of spill out to your whole budget. So maybe you're trying to save to be able to for your first house because you want the stability of a mortgage, or you want to be able to paint the walls, or whatever your goal necessarily is with a house. If you are prioritizing giving savings of giving charity or giving to friends and family to the point where it is going to significantly delay that goal, then it might be a time to pull back and pause. And I'm not saying that giving can't hurt a little. I think it's nice to be aware of it because I think you get a lot of internal benefits from thinking about charity very productively, having it feel like something that has a little fraction of pain to it, which I think for a lot of people is around the 5 to 10% of total income level. But it is important to recognize what the trade-offs are. And this is one of those areas where sometimes that you can find you get the same level of impact and that like or a more concentrated impact if you are giving if you're one of those people that like signs up for recurring donations every time your heart breaks over something and you realize you have a lot of them going. You've got some through United Way at work. You've been giving some of them online. You also give some just random giving to GoFundMe's and campaigns and blah blah blah. Um, and you add it up and you're not giving very much each time, but you're actually giving a lot overall. Sometimes it can be helpful to scale back and give a larger amount to like one organization you care about, one family member you care about, whatever that kind of giving in that category is, because it's more impactful, even if it's to a smaller organization, than a lot of scattershot kind of giving in small increments. Sometimes it can make more of a difference to not do the recurring donation. As a former development professional, it pains me to say that, but to not do the recurring donation and instead prioritize being able to give a big appeal a gift at your school's fundraiser or something. Um, it's a matter of sitting down and prioritizing it against the other things in your life. Not percentage of income isn't the only goal. You can do something where you could match your spending in a category with giving to charity. So, we had a thread on the forums where people for a little while were like matching the amount they spend in self-care with the amount that they give to charity, or the amount they spent on groceries with the amount that they give to charity. I feel like that's really hard now because groceries have gotten so expensive. Um, but it's it can be really helpful to think about it from the perspective of from the perspective of prioritizing it not just as percentage of income, but thinking about it in context with the other goals, even if that goal is being able to get a manicure every other month or something like that. You might have some sort of goal that sounds kind of frivolous, and one way that you can make that have an impact outside of just your own priorities, self-care, treating yourself, is matching that giving level to it. That also can sometimes slow down your consumption of something if you know that you're matching dollar for dollar or 50 cents to the dollar, whatever you spend on a category. If it's something that you struggle with impulse control on, like clothing, for example, for me, if it's something that you spend a lot of money on and you might spend it in drips and drabs, you could even use one of that, if that, then this kind of online things like Digit, where you like it looks at your bank account and says every time you spend money on Poshmark, we also send that same amount to a charity that you care about. I don't want to say punish because I think giving is rewarding, but um a lady in Toronto is rewarding $10,000 to find her cat right now, and I'm wondering how. I mean, I appreciate that someone loves their cat that much and is able to allocate resources to that, but I do worry that that could end up in people doing sketchy things. Bamford said she wanted to put more finance info in her recent book, but her publisher said nobody wants that. I would totally want that. I would too. I looked at her website and her about page says, if you need help, dial 911. I know, healthcare can be super shitty, so get yourself that shitty ass help. I love you and I think you deserve it. Yeah, she had an interview on, I think it was Planet Money, where she talked all about this finance sort of stuff. And the whole thing that got her really into finance was that she got a bunch of medical bills and ended up for like trying to figure it out, went to Debtors Anonymous because she really likes 12-step groups. Went to Debtors Anonymous, but it taught her so much about finances, trying to get out of that medical debt. So anyway, she knows a lot about medical debt. This is good to hear. I tend to swing wildly between giving a lot and then worrying about my savings, and I swing into back and forth. I think it's okay to have seasons too. Like, you're going to have different financial priorities at different times. Um, this is not a giving related priority, but I just decided to spend money on wallpaper instead of synchronized skating. And that was like, I can do synchro at another time in the future, but now is the time to do wallpaper. And because we're building a place. And so there are just going to be times where you make the decision that you are going to prioritize something else. Yes, grandma used to have World Vision on auto pay forever. Yeah, World Vision is one of the big ones. Um, do people want to talk about how to evaluate charities? Because I can talk a little bit about that if you want. I know mostly the US, and a little bit about Australia. Um, and that's just because I worked in nonprofits in the US for a really long time. Um, but if people don't want to talk, if people feel like they have the tools to evaluate nonprofits themselves, we don't need to talk about it necessarily. Um, I do kind of want to emphasize the what I call the overhead myth. It's used by a lot of other people as well, but there has been this very pervasive idea that the best way to evaluate a nonprofit and a charitable organization is that they should have as little as possible percentage of their funding spent on overhead, quote unquote. But overhead is it includes like admin and fundraising. But the problem is that overhead also includes things like the rent for the building where they're conducting services, the staff salaries of people, even if those salaries are not, those people are like engaged in direct service work. Like, you have an organization that provides like social work to youth living on the street, and those employees still have to fill in timesheets and do a bunch of admin paperwork, and that would be included in overhead. And there is, just like any organization, there are things that nonprofits are going to have to spend money on that are not going to be direct service. When you think of your local coffee shop, they spend a lot of money on things to make the business run, like credit card processing fees so you don't have to pay with cash, and fixing the tables and making sure the, espresso machine is working. All of those things would be classified as overhead in a nonprofit. But your local business shop, you aren't going in there and being like, well, an espresso is $4. What percentage of that is going to overhead? And the focus on overhead as the only metric of a charity's effectiveness, and saying that high overhead meant that an organization was was wasting money, or the money wasn't going directly to the people that they served, or the cats that they served, or whatever, has led to some really pervasively bad things in the nonprofit industrial complex. And for a long time, nonprofits and charities were pretty much a rich white woman hobby that they did. So women that were wealthy enough to be married and not work, they would often do charitable works, and their unpaid labor is what would run a lot of these charities. As the sector became professionalized and we got licensed professionals, we stopped having a position where there were a lot of married women that were able to volunteer endless amounts of time to charities because they had to work to support their families. As we got to that point, what ended up happening is a lot of this kind of foundation and belief of there should be they're getting paid in good feelings if they work in this field. And so they shouldn't, they shouldn't demand like market comparable salaries. They shouldn't spend any money on overhead, so they're working on like a pile of boxes. Real example from a nonprofit office I had, just a pile of boxes instead of a desk because a desk would be overhead. And like a chair that you pretty much had to sign a waiver to sit on because it was like attached to a broom handle or something and like duct taped together. Like and the idea that everything needs to be spent on program costs is one of the reasons that there is not a lot of racial diversity in the world of nonprofits. A lot of people kind of get stuck. A lot of the nonprofit industrial sector gets stuck in this like kind of white savior mode. And it tends to be dominated by people that are able to have a spouse who works in the for-profit industry that can it's like kind of a perpetuation where it'll usually be a woman that works in this caring sector, which also probably speaks to the undercompensation in the sector. And often it is not a living wage. Or it'll be young people who are idealistic, get in young, they get paid so crappily that they end up leaving the sector because it's just not sustainable. I saw a bunch of years ago, I saw in the nonprofit AF, like, there's a nonprofit happy hour, like, group online that is a bunch of nonprofit workers where someone said, like, real talk, like, how are people making this work? Like, what is your retirement plan? And at that time, I had never worked in a nonprofit that had retirement, let alone felt like I had the ability to prioritize it. And quite a few of the nonprofits I worked at provided services for low income people, but all of the staff qualified for the services of the nonprofit. And that thread was really eye opening to me because most people essentially jokingly but honestly said my spouse. Like my retirement plan is that someone else in the household makes better money than me. And then this is particularly true, I would say, in smaller nonprofits, like less than 30 staff, which is the vast majority of nonprofits. And the overhead myth has really contributed, especially to people that have never worked in the giving sector, in the social sector, as some people like to call it, to this idea that like nonprofits are these corrupt, greedy corporations, because they are corporations generally if they're 501c3 in the US, that they're these corrupt organizations and they have like fat cat CEOs that are making a ton of money. And if you have a high overhead, that's a sign of that. But in reality, a lot of those really big organizations, World Vision, Goodwill, Salvation Army is a bad example because they're also a church, but like the really big charities, Children International, that you like see canvassers for on the street corner, those kind of charities have one, they tend to pay the administrators really big bucks that are market comparable, but also they have the financial skills. They bring in the consulting firms, they bring over the special nonprofit people. They know how to make their 990 look really good. Which is 990 is the tax form. You can look it up for any charity in the US. And, you know, get all of their tax information, how much their CEOs make, all their highly compensated officers. You can see like conflicts of interest for their board and everything. Board members for nonprofits in the US cannot get paid. So it's not like corporate board members. So they have the ability to do the accounting tricks of how they kind of shuffle that around. When you're looking at a small, like 3 to 10 person nonprofit, they often don't have the expertise to be able to do the insane, complicated funding formulas to make sure that their overhead looks spick span low. And often those are the employees that are like the most undercompensated. And, you know, like for most of the time that I worked in nonprofits, even when I had a full-time job, I didn't have health insurance. Most of those US charities have an office in Canada. Like Canada had a Bell Let's Talk who ran their donation Twitter campaign for years, claiming they would use it to mental health. And I think none of the money went to it. Oof. Do I have any thoughts on the roundup at the grocery store charities and such? I am so anti it. It is absolutely just a tax write off for the supermarkets. You're not getting any of the credit for it. And like I will say on the other side, I was never one of those charities like that got every CVS in the country to do a roundup for them or whatever. And that's the kind of stuff that like those really big charity development officers spend forever working on. But I will also say like the ones where you can like even just tie your Fred Meyer spending, which isn't even a roundup, but like you could tie your like Fred Meyer, which is a grocery store chain here, spending where like a small percentage of everything you spend would get donated to whatever local nonprofit you have. They can make like a huge difference for schools or small charities where like that really tiny amount of money could make a big difference. But I will also say the administrative headache of those is like quite big from the inside of a small nonprofit because you are dealing with a behemoth amount of paperwork in order to like get that tiny percentage off of it. But yes, it is a tax write-off for the supermarket. That's a myth too, but that's always how I've understood it. I mean, they do raise a lot of money for those charities. They tend to be really large charities. And in my opinion, if you're going to be giving to one of those large charities, you would want the credit to go to like a local canvasser or someone you know that's like running a marathon for them and like needs the donation to count towards their like fundraising credit. I just feel like if you're going to give to really big charities, which I don't necessarily think is a bad idea. I think if you're someone that right now is really compelled by what's happening internationally, you're going to be having to give to big charities because the scale needed in crisis zones and war zones for international aid, you need really big charities to be able to pull that kind of stuff off. It's tempting to say, I only want to give to small, really specific things. But in reality, the capacity and the skill and the logistics needed when you're trying to get aid to people in an active war zone, for example, you need real scale in order to be able to do that. Yes, mega companies sneak their charity donations in on the company. The Humane Society, the entire board is white women. I'm not surprised. It's like a common staff thing. That's Toronto Humane Society. I don't know about the other ones. This is why I had to leave a job once. They couldn't afford to pay me. I mean, yeah, this is like a thing that I've seen like quite commonly in nonprofits. Like I worked at one nonprofit for like 8 years and I went through like every type of employee status there. I was like a contractor. I was federal work study for a while, which meant I filled in all of the paperwork to get them certified as a work study. I qualified for work study at my school and then I had to fill in all this paperwork in order to get paid just so that it wouldn't come out of their books, but I could get paid for all the time that I spent there. I was a regular W-2 employee for a while, but I had to have a bunch of other job duties because it was the only thing that was grant fundable. I mean, like this kind of stuff is just very frustrating. It's especially when a nonprofit offering an honorarium to a low income person claiming 2 hours of your time for a gift card less than $50. If you're lucky, you get $100, which is also like, this is such a great example of like a thing that can be really frustrating as a service nonprofit where you want to compensate the community members that you're working with. And you know, you want their like time or whatever, but you can't pay them directly because then you would end up in an employee relationship. And sometimes you just can't pay them because the grant won't allow that. So you have to give them gift cards. I mean, this is a thing we run into all the time with my financial workshops where we try to like get incentives to get the youth there, but we have to give them gift cards because we can't give them cash because then we'd have to fill in a bunch of paperwork, blah, 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 blah. Quite a few of them are maybe undocumented too. So you've got like another barrier there around paying them. But also like half the time funders are like, we don't want to pay for staff time. And I'm like, everything we do is human services of that staff time is our main expense. But yeah. I didn't have a husband who was a real breadwinner, which is the only way you can stay at that job long term. Yeah, that is really very, very true. Thanks, Possum and Lillian. I've always thought that too, but I've seen half arguments for it. I mean, I think that those kinds of things can make a difference at scale, but that's not my preferred way to give in my own Some Canadian high schools made volunteering mandatory to graduate, so I saw a lot of nonprofit and I had a bad vibe about it. Okay, so this is actually the next thing I was going to talk about is that if you are in a position where you have more money or more time than money, I think that volunteering can be a really great way of of kind of helping fill that giving in your soul without without the financial outlay. However, if you are in a position where you have more money than time, giving can be a very valuable way of facilitating other people doing that kind of work. There are so many different ways that you can volunteer that can bring you joy. For some people, giving volunteering your time might look like direct service, but for a lot of people, volunteering might be using your very specialized professional skills for a small nonprofit that needs help doing like bookkeeping or some answering some kind of legal question or doing data entry. Like if you enjoy doing data entry, it could also be the kind of thing where you are spending your time volunteering for something that you um, want to do, not necessarily because of the warm fuzzies or whatever, because it gets you out of the house and talking to other people. And let's say you work from home in an office job and you just don't get a lot of excuses to do a little bit of physical labor. Maybe going to your food bank and like throwing around boxes for 2 hours every other Sunday afternoon or something, it adds variety to your life. And if you're in a position where you make like a high income, you might not even feel the financial giving. You might not even feel like, let's say you're this person that wrote in that that made $700,000 a year. Even if they upped it to 5% of their income, so say $35,000 a year that they gave, it's unlikely that that would affect their finances and themselves as much as actually giving up some volunteer time, especially if they do volunteering in a environment where they are not they are interacting with people they wouldn't typically interact with. For some people, volunteering might be, organizing the bookshelves at this preschool at your church. Or for some people, it might be, like one of the volunteering I did for years. I now do the financial workshops, which is a very specialized kind of volunteering that I do. But for years, taught kids how to make zines at the youth drop-in center, the homeless youth drop-in center. And it was great, and it was like some days I would just be sitting there for 3 hours and like talk to only one kid because they would all like be afraid of me or not want to talk to me. And then other days I'd like get to help make like 20 zines or something like that. And that's one of those things that like was valuable from the perspective of it was very different than what I did at my job. Um there's also volunteering you can do without ever leaving your house too, so don't kind of listen to that. I do want to emphasize it is okay if you don't have the time for volunteering and you don't have the money for giving right now. Because once again, focusing on yourself is not focusing on your own financial priorities, especially if it's in the short term, it's not going to make or break the universe. But I think it is good to identify what is a sustainable way that you can have some level of service in your life. And that could be financial, that could be volunteering, it could be both, that is sustainable for you versus a burnout kind of thing. I do think that there is a lot of organizations that rely on the work of volunteers to do work that really should be paid staff time. And part of the reason it often isn't is because of this kind of overhead myth. So yeah. Okay. Should we eat a donut? I've been talking for a long time. I'm very passionate about this subject. I said I didn't want to live stream today because it got sunny and I was like, I just want to sit outside, but it's not actually that warm. It's just sunny. And it's gonna rain at like any moment. But apparently, I'm just so passionate about talking about this topic that. So I'm curious to know, how are you all prioritizing giving? Is there particular organizations that you work with? Do you prefer to do international? Do you kind of not do a lot of giving right now? Do I have a cat cam?
They're up there.
The cats went upstairs. Okay, no cat cam. Okay. This is Talking Dough and Eating Donuts, so let's eat a donut. All right, here is the donut. I'm a little worried I'm not going to like it as much because it's got chocolate on it. I mean, I know I won't like it as much. So this is a strawberry, it's a chocolate dipped strawberry old fashioned. And if you missed it at the beginning, this is a real fresh cut strawberry, powdered strawberry dust from actual strawberries. This like kind of hard chocolate glaze, and then it's an old fashioned, which if you don't know is kind of like a harder, a little sour donut. So let's give it a go. Oh my gosh, it's so red on the inside. It tastes like Sour Patch Kids, kind of. It's really strawberry. I haven't even noticed the chocolate yet. Donut tax. Donut tax is being taken. One thing I wanted to mention, which is relevant when the donut is up on the screen, is that a lot of retail businesses are really, really struggling right now, especially smaller retail businesses. And your giving doesn't, there's nothing that says the tax status has to be a 501c3. She says, as someone who doesn't have a 501c3 for her charitable business. It's not too chocolatey yet for me, for a person who doesn't like chocolate, because it's so strawberry tasting on the inside. So, yeah, the donut is strawberry flavored, but it's like real strawberry flavored, not flake strawberry flavored, which is why I thought I could do it, because I don't like chocolate, but I'm really not noticing the chocolate because the strawberry flavor is so strong. I was just a hunk of strawberry. So here's the thing. If you decide that you want to support small retail businesses, whatever kind of retail business it might be, or some other type of business that isn't retail that's also challenging. But if you decide that your discretionary funding is best spent on going to the coffee shop in your neighborhood that you really don't want to close once per week or twice per week, or actually prioritizing getting like a yoga membership because you really don't want the yoga studio in your neighborhood to close, or you really don't want that diner that has been in your neighborhood for 30 years to close, and you want to make sure that you go and have brunch there every week and support them. That is a valid form of giving. There's nothing that a tax status confers on this that doesn't mean, like, you can prioritize however you feel like is a high use of your money. You can do both, but we've all got budget constraints. And if you feel like spending $50 a month on a charity halfway around the world is going to be less effective than making sure that you spend $50 a month at the restaurant in your neighborhood, that's fine. Oh, Minnie, I love this. I have this dream. I want to leave enough money where they have to name a wing after me. I like that. That's good rich people aspirational philanthropy goals. Possum says, this was a big thing early for us in the pandemic. Yeah, a lot of people were doing this early in the pandemic, but anecdotally, a lot of businesses that I thought were really going to struggle to survive in the pandemic saw a big surge of support. And now, with like rents going up and food costs going up and things like that, I've seen more. We also had an ice storm here, which was really rough for a lot of businesses. But uh, we're seeing now that like a lot of businesses that made it through peak pandemic have started closing, especially in the food service, like small business kind of world in Portland. And I think it's partially because there's so many things to care about right now that people aren't thinking about small businesses as much. So I think it's something that you can prioritize if you want. I appreciate you saying that. I always include in my thinking about charity money I give to artists I really like that are low income. Yeah, I include Patreon in my giving because I give that without any expectation in return. Some Patreons are really emphasize the things you get. For me, like I give everybody stickers, but I would do that. It's really just an efficient way for me to get everybody's address. Which, by the way, I'll mention it. Speaking of things that don't have tax status, Personal Finance Society or Patreon, I'll send you cat stickers. I still have 3 returned envelopes that I need to deal with of patrons where their addresses were wrong. People don't update their address on Patreon. Anyway, I think of Patreon as part of my giving budget. That's how the MS clinic in my city was built. I don't know who Barlow is, but his name is all over the clinic. Rich people, man. They love the naming rights. This is like the 3rd week in a row I've mentioned the Billions TV show, which we're not even watching that regularly right now. But in it, there was a whole thing where he didn't like someone. And they're like, it was like this formerly, oh my God, Aaron, please close that curtain. There was a formerly rich family where the main character, who's like a hedge fund billionaire, didn't like them. And to settle a score, he like bought the naming rights from something that was already named after them in perpetuity. Okay. I love the strawberry of this. I get almost no chocolate. There's like the tiniest hint of chocolate, but it's overwhelmingly strawberry, and I love it. I think if I fully liked chocolate, it would be a 5 out of 5. It is logistically hard to eat. Okay. What are we rating that? That was good. I think it was a 5 out of 5. The fact that I gave a 5 out of 5 to a donut that has chocolate in it, I feel like is notable. Look, 5 out of 5 right there. We're making short work of this donut log, though. The cats have decided not to be on the live stream. I would like to have $42 million to give away at some point. I don't know if I want to do the things that I would need to do to have $42 million. First of all, I like my job, and nobody makes $42 million in public radio. I don't even think the people that had a venture-backed startup that got bought by Spotify in public radio had $42 million. I agree. 5 is rare. It's very impressive. Oh, it's 2 families that merged their name to make Barlow. Interesting. I like how Minnie thinks that $42 million is not that bad to get a wing named after you. You've been engaging with some very large numbers, Minnie. We've been streaming for an hour. Does anybody want to talk about charity anymore? Have I talked about charity enough? Have we thought about it a ton? I have more. I could go on this topic for hours, but maybe we don't need to. I don't know where the kittens are. I can't believe the kittens are not participating in the cat cam. Are you vertically streaming me right now? Is it live? Apparently there is a vertical format of a stream of this, but I have no idea where the vertical crop is because I can only see the horizontal version. So I've probably been going completely out of the frame over and over again on the vertical stream. YouTube has now launched a feature that allows you to simultaneously vertical and horizontal stream. Well, I don't know if they were really pushing for you to do it simultaneously, but vertical live streams is a thing now. They're really all in on shorts. Okay, does anybody want to talk about the Kate Middleton drama? I am not usually a royal watcher. Someone said something that really resonated with me on the Oh My Dollar forums, because we did start a thread on the Oh My Dollar forums about the Kate Middleton drama. And someone said something I thought was really apt, which is that, like, in the beginning of dealing with, in the beginning of the Free Britney movement and the Britney Spears thing, it felt like it was something silly and, like, ridiculous to be worried about for someone so privileged or whatever. But then as you, like, started learning more about it, you realized that something might be, like, very, very wrong. And then it became clear that something was very, very wrong. And then you got invested in it as, like, a human rights issue. And that's very much how the Britney train happened to me. Like, I would not consider myself, like, a Britney Spears fan. But I got interested in it, like, from kind of the legal perspective. And then I realized, like, how deep it was and how bad it was. And that's kind of what this recent Kate Middleton has disappeared conspiracy is. I could give almost no craps about the monarchy. I followed the Meghan and Harry thing a little bit, and I think it was just because it was peak COVID and it was like a cultural moment. And I followed it like a little bit, which is a very typical American thing, is like I didn't care until it was an American involved doing an interview with Oprah. But I've become more and more convinced that, like, I don't agree with monarchy on the principle of, like, I think it's a weird system as an American. But I can see some advantages in having the head of state separate from your head of government and having them not be theoretically affected by day-to-day politics. Sure, I can make that argument. But the way the British royal family is, and the, like, absolutely over-the-top kind of mechanism of the British royal family, and how they have this huge commonwealth and all of these countries across the world that they're technically monarchs of, including Canada. I genuinely feel like being in royalty is, like, cruel and unusual punishment, especially in that family, for the people in it. And now this Kate Middleton drama really has me concerned for her. What is the drama? I hear she photoshopped a picture. Oh, honey. I like how that's what trickled out. Kate Middleton is hella missing. Like, hella missing. She has not been seen since Christmas Day. And they have been doing a really bananas way of rolling things out. So essentially she and the Prince of Wales, the heir to the British throne, who the current monarch now has announced he has cancer, but won't tell anybody what kind of cancer it is. But other things have rumored it's pancreatic cancer, which is like pretty much deadly for everyone very quickly. But they won't say what kind of cancer it is, or his prognosis or the stage or anything. So anyway, person who might be king very soon, and his wife and mother of the next in line in the succession has not been seen since December and had all of these planned trips. They had all these planned trips together in January and February abroad and like engagements on their calendars because that's their job. They are professional ribbon cutters pretty much and like meeting with patrons and stuff like that. And hadn't been seen for a couple weeks. That wasn't super normal after Christmas because as royals and professional ribbon cutters, they're very, very busy in the Christmas period. And then they kind of like are chill. But they had stuff on their engagements like mid-January. There is a lot of cat meowing upstairs. I'm concerned. Can you go check on the cat, Zarin? So then what happened from that is that there was an announcement made that she had gone in for a planned abdominal surgery and that she was going to spend 2 weeks in the hospital and wasn't going to be back to duties till Easter, which at that point was like 4 months away, which is like, it was interesting because they said she went through a planned abdominal surgery the day before, but they announced it a day later, and they had to cancel a bunch of engagements on our calendar, which doesn't make it sound very planned. Maybe the distinction at the time that they were making was that it was planned in that it wasn't emergency. It could have been the day before something happened. She went into the hospital. They said, we're going to get you surgery on the calendar tomorrow, and that's planned. They would not specify what kind of abdominal surgery. They just said it was non-cancerous, said she was going to stay out of the limelight. But the fact that it was a 2-week planned stay in the hospital at the outset for someone that has access to round-the-clock medical care in a literal castle there are not many surgeries that have 2-week hospital stays. And then what was happening, the other thing that was happening from that is there was no evidence that her husband was visiting her in the hospital. She was never being like one of the most highly prized paparazzi photos that you could get. No one saw her enter or exit the clinic, and no one saw her close-knit family members for the 2 weeks that she was in the hospital enter or exit the hospital to come visit her. But the king was like in a different hospital or a different wing of the hospital, and also he was getting cancer treatment, and there was a big deal made about the queen visiting him like every day. So it wasn't that they were subtly sneaking things in and out. This is also Kate Middleton, Princess of Wales. She was in full makeup, heels, and dressed to the nines within hours of giving birth, despite having a very high-risk pregnancy where she was like hospitalized with HG for most of her pregnancy. I think all 3 of her pregnancies, and made up in heels with the baby on the stairs for a press photo. There's been nothing for her where she hasn't been doing any press engagements. She hasn't been doing the tried and true format that the king has been doing of like royal reads well-wish cards from people. That's all fine. Like I am so happy for her if she has gotten a surgery that she's needed and is being given the time. I told you not to film the floor.
Twice when it goes on stream.
I have a kid now. Aaron keeps trying to call me out for my housekeeping, I feel like, by filming the floor during these live streams. But I have a kitten on my lap now. This is the kitten. Look at her. She's so cute. She can sunbathe and be on a lap. Where are we going? Where are we going, kitten? Oh, we're done now. Okay. Uh, so I really hope that she's just being given the time and the space to recuperate. There's a lot of speculation about what kind of abdominal surgery could have had that long of a recovery time. And this is not when things started to get weird. Things started to get weird when she had not been spotted at all. There'd been almost no updates. And then things were reaching like a fever pitch because it had been months since she had been seen. And there was one of the things that was concerning is there was a known ambulance that went too close to the estate where she was staying right after Christmas, so like December 28th. There was an ambulance with a police escort on December 28th. This was far before she had made any announcements about her getting the surgery or anything was known about her. There was no red flags about this, but this was just documented by Twitter users that were like, why is there an ambulance with a police escort going like by the Sandingham estate? So there's been a lot of conspiracy theories, and for a while they were really fun. I actually think Twitter kind of became a fun place again recently, which is, it hasn't been for a long time. A lot of the running theories were that she got a BBL surgery or that she was running like the Edinburgh, Glasgow, Willy Wonka experience. There was just a lot of really interesting things kind of going on. It had reached a fever pitch with the speculation, had kind of gotten out of control. It had been compounded by the fact that, like, King Charles, who has cancer, was releasing, like, several things, but there was just nothing. Like, radio silence, not a, like, I'm working from bed. And a 45-year-old member of, a 45-year-old who is married to someone in the line of succession died from blunt head trauma on the Wales's estate. And then the next morning, the Prince of Wales, her husband, pulled out of an engagement with like 40 minutes notice, like his godfather's memorial where he had a speaking role, and just said it was due to a personal matter. So like extra vague. All of this kind of like led to a fever pitch of conspiracy. So then there was a paparazzi photo taken, supposedly of Kate Middleton in her car, being driven in her car by her mom. She had massive sunglasses. It looked like it was taken on a potato. There was only one photo released. It was from the photography agency that generally celebrities call if they want to set up a pap shoot, you know, where like they would tell someone, oh, I'm going to be walking down the street with my new PR boyfriend or whatever at this time as a tip off. And this is the agency that did it. It looked nothing really like Kate Middleton, and the sunglasses were like, wow, they were huge. And it was very grainy. And so it pretty much, all it did was perpetuate this idea that it was maybe worse. Additionally, the Spanish media, a Spanish journalist who is sometimes engaged in a lot of conspiracy theories, kept saying that she had a very reliable source that said that Kate was in a coma. And she kept doubling down on this source. It wasn't getting printed in UK media, which is very interesting because there was just generally nothing being printed in the very aggressive tabloids there. However, they have essentially a security shutdown notice that they can do in the UK for the royal family and other political figures, where they can essentially make it illegal to print this kind of stuff in the UK about these kind of figures as a matter of, oh, is there a dreidel cam going on right now? She's got a dreidel in her mouth. She's going though. So there's a type of notice that you can do for security where essentially journalists can't release anything. And these tabloids, the royal family is like how they make all their money. So the fact that they were not even doing any kind of speculation or blind items about Kate is very interesting and kind of implies there was maybe a blackout. Also, that photo of her in the car did not get picked up by any UK media. They were not printing it because they said it was unauthorized, but paparazzi photos are never supposed to be authorized, right? Then there was an additional thing. Now we've gotten to the Photoshop scandal. I've almost got you caught up here. So the Photoshop scandal was that she released, it made headline news in the United States on Weekend Edition when I was hosting. It was a top line headline item in the United States, who does not usually report on like serious news programs about the royal family. But this is like the level of fever pitch that it released. For UK Mother's Day, Kate Middleton had released the first photo of her since December that wasn't this like grainy paparazzi photo that looked nothing like her under the sunglasses. And it looked off. It was her with her children. It was supposedly taken by her husband, which, by the way, there's been nothing showing that they're in the same place. They keep claiming they're in the same place, but there's been like nothing showing they're in the same place. But it looked really off. Like you could identify where there were like Photoshop blending errors made on it. So it got released, and then people started doing a lot of investigation of it. It also didn't look like it was taken at this time of year, just like the trees in the background. It really looked like it was like an older photo that had been, that they had released and tried to claim it was like recent. And then what ended up happening was all of these, it originally got printed. It's very common for the royal family to release photos on personal like websites or, personal social media, like this happened, which would be the Kensington Palace social media. They're not allowed to have their own like personal accounts, but the Kensington Palace social media. And then they would then release that photo to the news wires with very specific stipulations on how it can be used. And this is a source provided photo. This is quite common in journalism, but you only use it within certain contexts. There's all sorts of journalistic rules, and you can't use Photoshopped images other than like light toning and cropping in journalism. I can't use those in stuff with like crazy filters on it. I can't use Photoshop filters because it's just not journalistic, right? What ended up happening is all of the speculation and investigation into this photo, it became so obvious that it was Photoshopped, including like the metadata says it was Photoshopped, that all of the major wire services pulled it for journalistic integrity and violating their standards. So then what needed to happen? Someone needed to get thrown under the bus for it. Who got thrown under the bus for it? The Princess of Wales, who wrote a like... their defense was graphic design is my passion. But they essentially said that like all amateur photographers, I occasionally experiment with Photoshop. I'm sorry for any like with photo editing. And it was really their defense was that like I guess a royal family member who absolutely has an entire press office at her disposal would be fucking around with Photoshop as like a fun hobby when she's recovering from major abdominal surgery. I should also say that they keep pushing out the Easter timeline. So there has been some kind of soft launch that maybe she won't be back to work for 9 months. And originally the military said that she would be at a June event for Trooping the Color. And then they had to retract it and take it off the website when press asked for it, because apparently they can't guarantee that she'll be back in action by June. The statement where she said that it was graphic designer her passion was once again just a text statement published on the social media. There is a lot of speculation that she might have ditched. Maybe there's a divorce going on, and it's like a massive PR blunder going on. Then there was another photo released, which was literally just like the profile of her face in a dark car. And I feel like if they were intentionally trying to cover something up, they wouldn't be this messy with it. Okay, I've said a lot. Paparazzi potato cam. Yeah, I just genuinely. Is she alive though? Right. We're not sure. I mean, there's a lot of people who think that maybe she ain't alive anymore. I think it's very unlikely that she's dead. I'm not an expert, by the way. I'm just someone who's been following this on the internet for like 3 weeks. Um, this is not my journalist hat on. If you do want to read a real journalist from outside the Royal Rota perspective, BuzzFeed's former royal reporter wrote for Neiman Labs this amazing timeline and also this like Q&A about how Royal Rota press works in England. Very fascinating. She's like 5 years of experience doing royal reporting or more than that. And it was very fascinating and I highly recommend it. You can find a link on the Oh My Dollar forums from the Princess of Wales conspiracy theories thread. But she might be dead. I think there's a couple different scenarios. One, I think she just genuinely had an abdominal surgery and asked for privacy and they actually gave it to her. That we are all reeling from this because it was so unusual. This is the same person that they pushed out on the hospital stairs in heels and full makeup hours after giving a high-risk birth. I that maybe the PR bungling that these people whose entire job is PR pretty much is doing is because they just do not know how to function in this environment. Because I honestly feel like this family has hundreds, if not thousands of years of experience doing cover-ups that I just feel like they absolutely could be someone that I just feel like if they were trying to cover it up, they would do a better job. A prevailing theory is that she had some sort of surgery that takes a lot of recovery time, and she's in a very, you know, her aesthetic and her princess-like qualities is the core of her job. What am I trying to say? It's personality based. Oh, I can't remember the word I'm looking for. The kittens are at the donut shop. This is important. So, image. She's a very image-based role. So maybe she really is just recovering from something that isn't very princess-like, like Crohn's or colitis, and she has a colostomy bag, and she just wants to be private about it. She's been in the public eye for more than half her life. Like, poor girl. Poor grown woman. And maybe she just wants some privacy. But a lot of people think there is a possibility that her husband, who's been rumored to be cheating on her for years, apparently, is it just like his dad, she's asked for a divorce or she's run away and she's done with it all and doesn't want to be part of this family anymore. And essentially they're trying to cover it up by like posting on the social media or making some sort of excuse for this. Maybe they think they can get her to come back. Like it would be probably a big blow to the image of the royal family, which is already tenuous, if she, yet another mother of the heir, decided to divorce and leave. Oh, yes. Minnie said, and the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were surfaced. That was another one where it was like the pop culture moment that happened. I was like, originally, like, I don't know who either of these people are. I don't really care. And then I kind of got invested in it because I realized it was a human rights issue. They now have to put the king on Canadian money. And the song you sing, I have to change lyrics to King, the God Save the Queen song. I forgot that God Save the Queen was like, that wasn't the actual song, because my whole life it's been God Save the Queen. Possum Planner says, I'm on my edge of my seat with this. I am invested. I am way too invested. We've got a lot of good memes going on in the forums. I hope genuinely that she's just recovering from surgery and they're giving her the time and the space to do that. And I wish we all had the privilege and the ability to be able to like be off of our job for a bunch of months if we needed that time for our health. Like, that would be great. But this is fascinating. Thank you. I'd heard about this, but barely, but hadn't dug into it at all. Yeah, I mean, I've dug way too much into it, I think, at this point, but I'm finding it fun, but kind of in a weird way. I think I understand why tabloids sell so well. Like, gossip is like, in my real life, I think something I have a lot less fun with, but it feels very low stakes when it's people you'll never meet, but at the same time, it does feel kind of bad on the inside. I'm concerned for her safety because if other royals or, people that have left kind of that system, the firm, are to be believed, like Meghan Markle, it it sounds like she wouldn't have access to her passport, her own money, any of that. Luckily, her family is also wealthy, and also, like, it seems like quite close-knit, so if she wanted to get the fuck out, I think she could get out. I think she has a lot of negotiating power, and I think there's a possibility that they threw her under the bus. If there really is, like, divorce discussions or separation discussions going on or something like that, I think that it may have been a strategic thing to throw her under the bus. I will also say that by saying that Prince William took that photoshopped photo of her, I it puts him near her without any actual visual evidence that she's near her. What is scary is that we've just gotten no proof of life. I mean, there's been this Spanish journalist that's been insisting that she's been in a coma and that her source is really good. And also has been saying that there's a UK media blackout on all of this, which is absolutely a thing that could happen. Like, the UK media can have all sorts of rules about things that could threaten the national security of the country around what they can and can't talk about. And there has been surprisingly little speculation on her in a way where, in the UK media, in a way where there would be if they had just been given permission to kind of do that. There's a "Where is Kate" page on Wikipedia currently nominated for deletion. No harm, no foul, separate and move on. F it. I mean, I don't think that's true. I mean, there was a couple people that are in the UK that were speculating that, like, it would be the end of the monarchy in the UK if the marriage broke up, because, the current monarch was obviously his cheating partner is now the queen, and that was not a very popular thing, especially once Princess Diana died. And it's a very outdated institution. As far as just, like, the rules in it and all of this kind of things that would happen in it, and their popularity has just, like, tanked. And if son like father was shown to do the exact same thing to his wife, who's already provided him an heir and two spares, like, and generally has higher likability ratings than a lot of the other members of the royal family, I think there is a very real possibility that it kind of goes down with this. The current king is not well liked, and I largely does have to do with the divorce and the infidelity. I mean, other reasons too, but and, like, it's possible the current king is dead in a matter of months. Maybe he has a really treatable cancer and he's doing fine, and he obviously has enough resources to get the super fancy, like, genetic targeting, like, thing that rich people get rather than chemo. But he also could have pancreatic cancer, as is rumored in some media outside of the UK, which, once again, there's reasons why that media could be able to print some stuff that they can't print inside the UK. And pancreatic cancer has one of the worst outlooks of any kind of cancer. So I will also note he is dealing with cancer, and yet he keeps posting the, like, well wishes and I'm working from bed and blah, 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 blah. He's doing the stuff. Kate, who has played the game for a really long time, doing none of this stuff. My wife fixated on the hands and how out of proportion they were. Yeah, Aaron posted a photo on the forums where someone had inserted all of the hands just on all the children's head, and it looked really good. It looked actually better. Someone also did one where she was replaced by the Bernie Sanders, like, arms crossed with the mittens meme. I thought that one was pretty good too. All right. Now I've just spent half an hour talking about Kate Middleton, so I feel like we should well and truly be done now. You should join into the Kate Middleton conspiracy theories thread, where we're having a good-natured and not, I think, too wild thought into this. I will say I was starting to really feel like a conspiracy theorist when I was like, it looks like this photo is photoshopped. And everybody's like, man, you're deep in the conspiracy holes. And then like 2 hours later, all of the news outlets pulled it because of the photoshopping. So I'm just going to say it's currently feeling like one of those things where every time you think that you've gotten into a conspiracy hole, you start to go, wait, is there something actually very wrong here? So I hope she's okay. I don't know anything really about this woman. Don't know her. I still wish nothing but the best for her. And it seems like it's a very bad institution to be a woman inside of, unless you were the reigning longest running monarch ever. How about everybody tells me what they're looking forward to this week, and then we will head out. Yes, it is true. This is a royal mistress. They're really keeping tradition. Exactly. All right, y'all. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to this week. What am I looking forward to this week? I'm working on a piece that I'm looking forward to this week. And then I have a big thing happening at my work later this week, which I can't talk about yet, but it'll be public on Thursday. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, so 2 work things. Maybe I should have something I'm looking forward to outside of work, but I can't think of anything right now. I think we have to pick tiles for the rentals this week, though, so that's kind of exciting. Oh, and I'm going to order wallpaper. Those dudes. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a royal tradition, right? All right. Have I lost you all? I might have lost you all. I'm not seeing any chats anymore. Either my internet pipes are broken or everybody's just tired because it's pretty late in a bunch of places. So. Oh, okay. I see some chats now, finally. I'm looking forward to getting my tooth fixed. Yeah, Erin has needed a root canal for like almost a week now, and it's been really miserable. So, yep. Root canal and wallpaper, all of the best things. Maybe we can wallpaper your tooth. Looking forward to rest and starting a new position as a grant director. Oh, really? You started a new position. Is this still in education, or is it a different kind of grant director? That's exciting, though. I'm excited for your rest as well. That's really exciting. How did your show go, by the way? You were sold out for last time we talked about it. I think you finished the show, right? Play is finally done. Yeah, there we go. I plan to enjoy the last 3 days of spring vacation. Ooh. Is it this week? Is it only 1 week, or is it 2 weeks for you? That's exciting. I guess it was last week for us, but I didn't really notice. Like, normally I notice when the rink is too crowded, but I did say that I'm glad the royal family is not finding their unclaimed children. Yeah. Poof. This is one of the ones where I just start to feel bad, but the long running person thought to be Prince William's mistress, apparently one of her kids looks shockingly like the Kate Middleton's kids, which is a little concerning. Do you guys see the cat in the background in silhouette here? She looks like she's in an 80s music video. Still in education, I can't leave now. You're locked in forever. That's exciting, though. New role. Sold out for last 2 weekends. Woo! 1 week only here. Yeah, I don't think we can afford to have any more spring breaks in Portland because we missed so much with the strike because we had like a full month-long PBS strike here, Portland Public Schools. I'm spraying the yard with plant growth regulator tomorrow to help slow the grass down. You just get rid of your grass. That's another thing you can do. Just get rid of your grass. Then you don't have to worry about it at all. It's just a thought. All right. Thank you all. It's been lovely to have you here. I hope you be as sleepy. That's why there's no more chat happening. Well, I've lured you to sleep now with all of our discussion of Kate Middleton. Stay safe. Enjoy your new jobs, your rest of your spring break, your root canals, your slowing grass, And yes, everybody have a lovely rest of your week. And I will see you all next Tuesday.